Welcome to season 3 of Teacher Chat, and this is our episode 2 of this year. Certainly excited to talk about ESL Matters, and so we have some wonderful guests with us. To my immediate left is Myra Talley, and she works as a supervisor in our English as a second language department. And then directly in front of me, across from me, is Michael Sain, who is the director of ESL. And then we have a fabulous teacher with us, who I just learned a lot about in the last 5 minutes before we got started the podcast, Caryn Shapiro. And she's been with the district about 8 years. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves, and we'll start with you, Myra. And I think it's helpful just to let us know sort of what brought you maybe to the district, where the interest for English language learners emerges, comes from. Let's learn about our guest.
Great. I am year 27 with Columbus City Schools. I started off as an ESL instructional assistant and then kind of moved on up to being one of our coaches, our instructional support coach, and now as an ESL supervisor. But ESL really is near and dear to my heart. You know, I came here as a refugee myself and had to learn English, and also was one of 77 students in the ESL
Where
program.
from?
I'm from Laos.
Okay.
Yeah, so I came here and was one of 77 students in the ESL program way back in 1980-ish, 85.
I thought you were going to say you've only been working for the district for 7 years. So you don't have to disclose.
Tell my age.
That's right. It's all good. We
You
got
know,
you.
and you know, I just wanted to be able to give back, you know, and things, and really see that, you know, a lot of the situations and challenges that we see now is still prevalent to, you know, for our families and things way back then. So, you know, with working with ESL, helping our families, and as well as the Language Assistance Center, you know, I really can identify with our group of students and our families and, you know, and things. So that's really kind of what grounds me here with ESL and CCS.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Mr. Sain.
Yes. I'm finishing up year 24 with Columbus City. I did a number of years with in the corporate world before I decided to come back to education, which I should have done in the very first place. So, like I said, I'm finishing up year 24, and that's from coming to Columbus City as a teacher, and then, of course, then deciding to go into the administrative part of what we do, and then moving on to LI, then assistant principal, and then principal director of Columbus Global Academy.
Now, when you were a teacher, were you an English language learner teacher, or did
Yes.
you teach ESL? Okay.
Yes, actually, my entire 24 years has been within ESL itself.
Okay.
When I first started back, that in my first year, I was at Northeast Career Center as part of the ESL program there, where
Okay.
yeah, and then we were teaching a lot of the newcomers there, and then of course I moved on to different things within the ESL department. So everything has been within the ESL department with what I've done in my career here with Columbus City.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Caryn.
I have been part of Columbus for 8 years now. This is my 8th year in the district. My interest started in the district, though, back in 1994. I was working as a team leader for City Year, the inaugural core, and my team was working in Reeve Avenue Elementary School.
Nice.
And I loved everything about the school and the kids there. Kind of took a roundabout way to get my license. Got my license as kind of a second act. I've only had my license for 8 years. Worked in a wide variety of nonprofits, but always somehow connected to education and the schools. And I have been at Global Academy since day one, and fully intend to retire from Global Academy when I'm all done. So,
Awesome. So, shameless plug for those listeners that may be thinking about teaching as an alternative pathway, right? There are many ways into the profession, and we have folks that started as, one person that started as an instructional assistant, 2 folks that came from different sort of career trajectories. Certainly, City Year has been a viable part of Columbus City Schools for a very long time. So a couple of things before we get started. One, it's just that the purpose of this is to center teacher voice, right? And why we do teacher chat is because we value the importance of teacher voice. But it's this particular episode dealing with the subject of English language learners is one that we know has been in the national news, and certainly there's been a significant change, influx of English language learners in our own city. And so we felt like it was a good time for us to lean in and talk a little bit about what is ESL, what does it mean. So I think a good place for us to start would be just around what the acronym means, right? So when we say ESL, when we say ELL, what does that mean? We hear about getting, if a person wants to work with students who are ELL learners, then they would get the TESOL endorsement. And so help us with some of that for some of our listeners that may not know.
Well, it interchangeably. Yeah, those two things go interchangeably. Like right now, it's ELL. At one point a year ago, it was EL, English learner, English language learner.
Okay.
But they're kind of interchangeably because we refer to our department as the ESL Department, English as a Second Language Department.
Okay.
But then again, you could have a student that's in the classroom that's an ESL student, or English learner. So they work interchangeably.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so those acronyms, and for the most part, it probably will change again here because it's
Multilingual.
Multilingual.
Okay.
That could be coming up real soon, and it's used some of the places right now. So multilanguage learner or
Okay.
So it's important.
Right.
But it's all interchangeably.
Okay, and just meaning that these are students that know more than one language, right? Whereas I only know English. Right? I did take 4 years of Spanish in a few years, but it didn't take. I don't know it fluently, but I can pick up just a few things here and there. So what about TESOL endorsement? What does that mean?
TESOL stands for Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages.
Okay.
So it's an endorsement that is required to get certification for our ESL teachers to be able to teach EL students in our district.
The way I got my TESOL endorsement is I went through the teacher licensure program at Ashland University, and I'm actually integrated social studies 712 and ELA 712 certified. The social studies was my first license, so I had to take a few courses and pass the test, and then my TESOL endorsement attaches to my social studies license. So I had to be in a social studies position for 2 years until my TESOL endorsement becomes permanent. Now I can kind of float anywhere. Also with my ELA, that's kind of a secondary license for me. That's also 712. That allows me to teach ESL, ELA anywhere as well.
Okay.
Which is important, very important to note, is that, of course, when you have your TESOL endorsement, that will allow you to teach ELA to K-12 English learners.
Okay.
So that's very important for people that are out there that may be thinking about, hey, joining the ESL team, or thinking about that once you get your TESOL endorsement, that'll allow you to teach K-12.
Wow.
ELA.
Okay.
For English learners.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's important because there's a big difference between kindergarten and 12th grade. I learned that. I mean, there's some benefits to both. The kindergartners are a joy, but they have a lot of energy, right? And 12th graders are a joy sometimes. So I've seen a little bit of all those things, as I know many of you have as well. So I think what would be a good place to start past sort of orient ourselves around the acronyms is maybe just kind of a general overview of how the English language learner or ESL department office works and supports equity across the district. Equity is very important to our superintendent, of course, but as well as all of us here. And so when we think about equity, the definition that we often use is that it's making sure that each student has what they need right now in order to be successful, in order to get to the next level of learning. So how does English language learner department, ESL department, support equity?
For my area that I work with in the ESL Language Assistance Center, we want to make sure that we provide interpretations as well as translations for our families and our parents to be able to understand the different opportunities that our district have to offer. It's important that they know that there is summer school, summer experience that they can also apply for, or school choice, to be able to choose different school buildings that their child can attend. So we want to make sure that that is resources in place for all of our families to be able to participate in things. When you're talking about equity for academics, we definitely make sure we provide different supplemental resources and materials so that way our teachers can meet our students where they are at.
Okay. Awesome.
And the part that we oversee all of it together, but the part that I kind of oversee with our coordinators that work out, we see to it that our coordinators provide that professional development
Okay.
to our teachers and our general education teachers when it's possible to make sure that they understand the equity that needs to be. That's very important to our English learners while they move from the ESL teacher into the general education classroom. So that's very important.
So, and Caryn, I'm interested. Thank you both for that. To hear from you from a teaching perspective. I mean, certainly you worked with City Year and saw students who some I'm sure were English language learners, some were not. But then now working as a TESOL endorsed English language learner teacher. How do you see sort of equity being carried out through your work as an English language teacher?
So equity in the classroom for me, personally, is the sheltered sites, especially at the high school level. A lot of people look at a sheltered site as maybe that's not the least restrictive environment. Maybe putting our language learners in with general ed and native English speakers might be a better option. From my perspective, having a classroom full of high school kids who are egocentric, we know that their psychology of a teenager is pretty egocentric. Everybody's looking at me. Everybody, I don't want to speak out. I don't want to stand out, but I want to stand out. I don't know who, that whole mindset.
Speaking as a mom of three,
right?
Young adults now, but you've gone through the teenage
right.
stage.
So you want to stand out when you want to stand out. You want to blend in when you want to blend in. You're not really sure. When you're in a classroom full of everybody in the same boat, you're all English language learners. That feeling that you're under a microscope, that you're kind of the center of the universe, kind of melts away. Everybody's in the same boat. If you're putting a brand newcomer into a general education classroom, they're going to be less likely to speak. They're going to be less likely to draw attention to themselves. So equity for us is providing that sheltered site education, that sheltered site 2 years where we can build your language capacity at the same time we're building your academics. I don't want anybody to mistake that we are dumbing down content. Not by any stretch. Our kids are actually doing the work, double time. They're learning English while they're learning 10th grade content. So we're just providing it at a very different. If I have 30 kids, I have 30 different approaches.
Okay. And so I think I appreciate you mentioning that term, right? So shelter site. So maybe like Myra, Michael, tell us a little bit about how do we make the determination, right, if a student is in a shelter site or if they're in a more inclusive environment? I think there's, and this is what I hear from Caryn, there's a place for both, right? And when we're talking about equity, it means we're thinking about differentiation. How do we scaffold, make sure that, students have what they need at the appropriate time, and then when they need maybe less support, there's a transition plan for them?
Sure. It all starts at central enrollment.
Okay.
Okay. And then what we do is we distinguish when a student comes through central enrollment. There's a meeting, of course, with the people there. And of course, if a student comes in as a newcomer that would have transcripts that shows that they've been to school, they've had schooling, and they have a transcript already, they are tended or forwarded more towards the shelter site. Now, when a student comes through and they don't have any transcripts whatsoever, and they show that they've never been to school or new to the country, then they're geared more to the Columbus Global Academy, the newcomer program itself. And so, like Caryn said, after the 2-year period, after they've had a chance for the newcomers that have never been to school to get them prepared, instead of sending them right directly out to the shelter sites or out to their regular general education classrooms, if the building is, if they want to attend their home school, it's better for them to be with Caryn and the Columbus Global Academy team in order to have that 2-year readiness period that they get them ready to go out. Now, you can go out in that first year. Some of the students that will come, they're really, really sharp, even if they don't have transcripts. Sometimes they're ready to go in the first year. So that's a situation where they all sit down together and they collaborate with the administration and say, hey, these particular students are ready to go. They should go out instead of waiting 2 years. They're ready to go after the first year.
Okay.
So then, of course, they'll come to an agreement on the students that need to stay that extra year.
Right.
And then they get that second year. And then after that, they have to move out to the shelter site or sometimes directly from the shelter site into the general education classroom if they're doing very well. That's a
Okay.
recommendation from the team.
And that's the definition of equity at Global Academy right there. I have had students matriculate from my 10th grade classroom to general education and are flying. As a matter of fact, I was telling Mr. Sain last night, one of my favorite students was sitting in my classroom as a newcomer 2 years ago as a 10th grader, found out yesterday he earned a full ride to Denison University.
Wow.
Full ride.
Yeah.
And
marvelous.
he went from my classroom to general education. I have a young lady this year from Haiti, tons of education behind her, French speaker, just needs English. She's got content down. She will matriculate, probably not even to a sheltered site. She also will probably matriculate to general education. I have a third student, still can't identify all 26 letters of the alphabet. In my site, that doesn't make her very different than a lot of her peers. There are a lot of kids like her, so she doesn't feel singled out. I can sit with her one-on-one. I can present the content to her. Because she doesn't read doesn't mean she's not intelligent. She needs more scaffolding. So I'll work with her one-on-one while her peers are working on other things, and she's getting what she needs, and we'll get her to the point where she has enough to move on to a sheltered site.
Yeah, I think that's, you bring up a marvelous point in that, when we're talking about English language learners, I think sometimes people mistakenly assume that because someone isn't maybe a fluent articulator in a language, right, that they're not intelligent, right? But intelligence is totally separate from language acquisition. And so, I think for us as a system, we recognize that there's value and importance in diversity. I think our listeners would be helped by understanding a little bit about the context that we currently have in our district. I don't know that people know that we're as diverse as we are. Most urban centers across our nation are becoming more diverse. I think most folks know that Columbus is the 14th largest city in our nation and growing, particularly in our metropolitan area. So, maybe Michael, Myra, can you talk to us a little bit about what the demographic, landscape is for us as it relates to English language learners?
Yeah, I know in Columbus we have definitely either reached or have surpassed 11,000, EL students in our district here. We're probably about 22% of the student population.
Over 1/5
Yes.
of our student population in Columbus are English language learners.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We have about 80 different languages with dialects is about 100, a little over 100, and things. So we are definitely very diverse in our district, and so we try to make sure that we provide, support not only for our students but for our families as well.
Very interesting. So what are some of the major languages that are in our system that our English language learners have? I'm sure there are some we see more prevalent than others.
Sure. And of course, our top 5 being Spanish, Somali, Nepali, Arabic, and French.
Okay.
We have others that are coming right now that are catching up to the Arabic and to the Somali, actually, also. We have Swahili.
Yes.
And then we have Portuguese, and of course, the Haitian Creole population is increasing. So those numbers, but as for the past few number of years, it's been those top 5, Spanish, Somali, Nepali, Arabic, and French, with Spanish probably making up 40 to 45% of the roughly 10.5 or close to 11,000 students that we have.
Okay. And Caryn, you're at Global, which is where our Welcome Center is. Mm-hmm. Have you seen, over the last 8 years, has it seemed pretty consistent in terms of the students that you serve, or has it changed for you?
There's been a big shift. When I first started at Global 8 years ago, we were our population was predominantly Somali or Nepali. There was a shift midway through those last 8 years where we had a large influx of Spanish speakers. There always have been Spanish speakers, but their numbers grew rapidly. A lot of that was due to just political changes in numbers of refugees permitted in and different people allowed to immigrate or not. Right now, Mr. Sain said, I've seen a large increase in our Haitian Creole speakers, students from Haiti. We have, at Global Academy, we have a fairly sizable West African population, Congolese and Tanzanian population, Swahili speakers. But like Myra said, it's super common. If I have 25 kids in a classroom, there are 15 countries represented and 10 languages in one classroom at any given time.
Wow. So let's talk about acceleration, right? How does the growth that we've been seeing, this year, like let's say even within the last 3 months, like how does that compare to, our population, growth, in years past?
If you don't mind.
This is going to be a therapy session as well.
Let me start.
Yeah.
As of since August the 1st, okay, when we roll over with our numbers, we've received roughly close to 3,000 actual newcomers to the district.
Wow.
Now, we've received more in those 3 months, since August 1st, we received more than we've ever received in any 1 year.
Wow, in a calendar school year.
Calendar
Wow.
school year. So that 3,000, we hit that number right probably around October 1st.
Okay.
Mid and see, so that number is growing, and we've, like I said, we've hit that, and we've never hit that number in a year, in a year's time. So that just shows the influx that we've received as a district.
Yeah.
And then it just shows also, and I'd like to say that the fantastic job that our teachers are doing,
Right.
and our instructional assistants
Right.
are doing, because we've had to handle that number.
Yeah.
And make sure that, of course, those students coming into the classroom are, receive the same services and the same support.
Yeah, it's remarkable, right? The growth, and so I'm wondering, sort of Caryn, if you can share with us a little bit, like from your perspective, and Myra and Michael as well, like, a fifth of our population are English language learners, right? Growing, right? As we see the numbers. What's the implications for teaching and learning? When you look at teachers that are going to have students with, additional needs or different needs than what they've experienced previously. What advice, would you offer? What plans are we, putting in place to support teachers? So we'll start with you, Caryn.
So it's a busy classroom. Like I said, I have all teenagers. I'm a more the merrier kind of person by nature, so I'm okay with it. It's certainly not ideal. Clearly, for newcomers, an ideal ratio might be 20-1 or 18-1. I'm more like 27 or 28 to 1, and I know that I'm probably on the lower side for a lot of our sheltered sites. I'm feeling pretty fortunate that those are my numbers right now. That said, the beautiful thing of differentiation is I mentioned one of my young ladies from Haiti this year, French speaker, tons of education behind her, really working hard on her English, but tracking way ahead on my classwork and assignments that I have. I use her quite often as a peer tutor. Best way to learn something is to teach it.
Absolutely.
It's reinforcing her learning. She's able to switch back and forth between English and French for some of my other French speakers who are either newer or struggling more with lessons or just not as much experience in schooling. For instance, she works very often with a boy from Mali. She's from Haiti. He's from Mali. They both speak French. She's helping reinforce her own learning, helping him progress through his lesson while I can circulate to the rest of the class and then check back in with him. She can go back and do her work. So there are challenges, quite a few challenges, with the growing numbers. It's also great job security. But there's
ways. You love your job,
right? I mean, I do. But there are ways to also to leverage the numbers and to make it work to your benefit if you're willing to get creative with it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the reality, right, of teaching is it's becoming more and more complex. Teaching is more than rocket science, I say, because teachers are the ones that equip the rocket scientists,
Well,
right?
One of my first, I go back to one of my first teacher, when I was getting my licensure, one of my first professors said, we are the only industry that doesn't get to choose our widgets. We get the widgets that come through the door. So if you're not willing to work with the widgets you got, you're in the wrong business.
Right.
Go somewhere else.
Yes.
So it's all about sometimes that flexibility and willing to experiment and see what's going to work and what doesn't, and just keep moving forward with for like I said, as equitably as you can with the kids.
Yes. It takes real brilliance to be an effective teacher. And so, just take this opportunity. Thank you for the work that you do, and our listeners, for all the teachers out there. It is an extraordinary work. I believe that it is a noble profession. And so thank you. Don't want to miss that opportunity. So let's talk about how we're supporting. Folks like Caryn that have the TESOL endorsement. They've had some official or formal preparation. Many of our teachers, maybe like me, they're English teacher, right? Or they have a math, a license, or science, or they teach integrated science. How are we thinking about supporting those folks as our English language population continues to increase?
Sure. On the school side, and then I'll let Myra jump in on the side that she handles for us. What we do is that we have coordinators within the ESL department.
Okay.
And the coordinators that we have elementary and we have secondary coordinators that work inside of our department, and they are both and they're certified in particular areas. We have a math coach, then we have science, and then we have social studies, and then we have, of course, ELA. And we have I have two of those coordinators, and they kind of cross over between elementary and secondary because, of course, our regions are K to 12. And those coordinators are responsible for going out to support Caryn and going out to support the shelter sites, and also going out to support the general education teachers that need that support, that say, hey, look, we just had this student come over into the general education class. We need more support. So that's what our coordinators do. They go out and they work per region. We have them assigned to each region, and that's their job, is to go out and do professional development, go to those staff meetings, provide those teachers with the additional support that they need in order to instruct their students the best way possible.
Okay.
So that's what we do from a department standpoint in supporting teachers and instructional assistants.
Okay. Thank you. And so, Myra, your work is also supporting our English language learner population, but in a little bit different way. Talk to us about,
Yes.
how that looks.
In talking about the growth, we deal a lot with connecting families with school personnel. So we're kind of the bridge, the communication bridge, for our families. In the first semester alone, we probably filled, I want to say, a little over 12,000 calls, and which is definitely on track to surpass what we have done last year. So
Wow.
we have provided interpreters at over 140 different events already, CCS events and school events for our families, just so that way they can also be, at the buildings and at these events and take opportunities from the city that the city has for them, as well as the district and things. Not only that, but we also provide cultural awareness, professional development for the buildings.
Okay.
So if you are a building and brand new to ESL, you're all of a sudden having an influx of families and students from the Muslim population and not really well aware of that culture. We do provide cultural professional development for that as well. In addition to the phone calls and the document translations we also provide interpreters for IEP meetings, ETRs, and things, just so that way our families are understanding of those services for their child.
Right. So some of our English language learners could be gifted, also students
Yes.
who are identified as gifted, or they could be students who are identified as having special needs.
Correct.
Or some level of disability. So thank you for saying that. So I want to give you all a chance to talk about some highlights. I mean, certainly, I'm sure you have some, you've shared some already, some classroom highlights, but even from a district standpoint, like, what would you point to is some of the highlights of the work that you do? I think folks would be interested to hear that.
Well, I think over the past 4 years, we made actual state gap closing. That's very important to us for language acquisition and for it's actually the OST for language learners and acquisition proficiency. So we've met that state goal, that state target.
So when you say gap closing, what does that mean?
That's
For
part
folks,
of-
everyone may not know.
Yes, that's the part of the report card. That's a piece on our report card that shows the progression of English learners in our district.
Okay.
And there's
All
a
right.
target each year that the students are required to hit based on what the state says, and that shows that they're making progress for
Okay.
language acquisition.
All right.
So that target this year is, I think, 53%, which the state expects us to have 53% of our English learners meet that gap closing target. Now, it's a formula tied to that, but that's it's pretty in depth, but you know, of course, we can provide that information. But that's our expectation, is that our English learners hit that gap closing.
Okay.
And it's another piece of gap closing that in that piece of the report card on gap closing that's really important to us, that I'm really, really proud of, is that, of course, if we have 10,000 students, of course, and then we take that state exam, that's 4 parts of that state exam. So there's actually 40,000 exams that we have to see to it that's through that OELPA, the state exam for English learners. That's 40,000 assessments that have to be given. For the last 3 years straight, we've hit 97, 98, and I think last year we hit 99% of that.
Wow.
Participation rate. See, that's huge for that number of students to take that many pieces of the assessment. And then that goes back to the teachers in our sites and all of our sites to see to it, because of course they have to make sure that those exams are given, and then that those students take their time and make sure that they do the best that they can with in passing that and making the gap closing. And that not only that helps that student, it helps the school and the district, and helps that particular building also.
Absolutely. Okay. Would you share
Yes,
any highlights?
One of the great highlights that I know our team worked with is the early childhood department. This past summer, we created a video with, for enrollment process for early childhood. So we kind of had a little caricature, avatar kind of moving and speaking and showing the families, the enrollment piece and, what to do and things. So we worked with Dr. Baker to provide sessions where families would come in, and we provided interpreters to sit with them and watch the video and kind of help them to fill out that paperwork for them and things. Not only that, but we have a huge engagement piece with our family engagement department and things, and working with the bilingual engagement liaisons, just to make sure that we're providing that connection between home and school as well.
Okay. Highlights for you, for your classroom.
Well, one I will say, I'm going to tag on to the testing. OELPA is certainly something that we work really hard. I mean, Global Academy exists to advance kids' English language learning, and we work really hard on the OELPA. But I'm going to kind of toot our horn about OST, which is Ohio State Test, which every 10th grader in the state of Ohio has to take. And we are a newcomer site, so keep in mind my students have certainly never had American history before, because why would they?
Right.
But last year we had 20% of my students pass. I had 18 of my 90 kids pass the the American History OST, and our science department had virtually the same. Our biology kids passed the same.
Nice.
So it shows, again, it goes to show that providing that equity, providing that sheltered site, providing that intensive language learning for our students makes a huge difference, because those kids are going to go on. And that said, in the middle band, we had I think close to 70 kids within 15 points of passing the OST. So that it works. What we're doing, it works. It's truly a team effort. It's the support of the department. It's the support of Mr. Sain. It's the teacher's commitment. It's the director of my school, constantly allowing us to innovate and change and adapt and reinvent and try new things that contributes to the success of the program.
Yeah, we're certainly fortunate to have Michael and Myra as a part of our team. Certainly Myra is a product of, the program, and then to come back and to reinvest. Thank you for that. And Michael's been consistent. He's the John Stockton of CCS, right? He's consistently dependable, right? And but we appreciate your efforts over the years. So, let's talk a little bit about challenges, right? We're going to do the sandwich effect, right? You got to have some goods, right? Some challenge in the middle, and then we'll end this off in a positive way. But there are always challenges to anything, and so want to give you all an opportunity to share with the listeners, many of whom are teachers, some may not be, some just community folks. What are some of the challenges around English language learning that from your particular seat, where you sit determines what you see. So it probably would be different lines of sight, but I think it would be helpful. So we'll start with you.
Right now, staffing. As our population grows, as our student population grows, our teaching staff has to grow. Our bilingual assistant population has to grow. And one thing that I've thought of, just recently, as two of my former students are now IA, are bilingual. One is a bilingual instructional assistant at Woodward Park, and the other one is at International. I would love to see the district maybe invest in a program for some of our ELLs who graduate with their biliteracy diploma. Maybe they track right into being an IA. Maybe at 18, 19, you're maybe not ready to be at the high school, but you could probably work at an elementary school. And a lot of these kids are also on the college track. This is a way to help them afford an education.
HR, you heard it here.
I mean, it's an investment. It's investing in our students in their future. And I have one of the young men in particular calls me all the time. Hey, I've got a new friend. He wants to be an IA too. So it's out there, and I think it's an investment that the district would see a lot of return on. Our students are. I'm really biased, but I would say EL students are magic. They're the perfect blend, especially at the high school level. They're the perfect blend of sophistication and vulnerability. They are a lot of fun. I love teasing and playing with them. But there's that hunger for education and that hunger to do better. It's something I think intrinsic to the immigrant, migrant, refugee mentality. I look back at my grandparents and I think, they were willing to do whatever it took to put food on the table. They weren't above anything. And there's something real beautiful about that mindset, and it's precious. And I think if the district invests in that, they'll see returns that just untold returns.
That's great advice. Appreciate you sharing.
I visit all the graduations too. I'm usually standing at the end of the stage with the card, so when they walk off, I got them. Sit down, have him sit down. No, but I can chime in on what Caryn had said a little bit earlier. One of the biggest challenges that kind of keeps me up at night is that, of course, the numbers, the increase in our numbers that we're getting to the district, and of course, I have to see to it because what everybody has to understand is that EL student comes in as a newcomer, whether they have transcripts or not, they are always entitled to go to their home school. See, so what happens is that, especially at the secondary level, some of our students that live out west, they say, well, of course, the newcomer program is a fantastic place, and we kind of try to gear them directly to that newcomer program. But they say, well, wait a minute, I live right down the street from
which is out north, right?
Yes,
now.
Which is out north.
Yeah,
and then they just say, well, West High School's right down the street, and my friends and my relatives maybe go there. I want to go right to my home school, which is their right. See, so then again, that starts to play with the numbers, and that starts to play, especially with a true newcomer that's never been to school, that now
because they're right to be there, but the services
aren't really geared to it because, of course, the shelter site is there, let's say at a West High School, and then the students that are there have usually come through Caryn and the program at maybe CGA, and they're out there probably at a little bit more advanced level. So a newcomer that's coming in that's brand new, that wants to stay in their home school, that tends to fill it up with the numbers that we've gotten that are coming into the district. It fills it up really fast. See, so that seat availability, I'm looking at that day in and day out on how we shuffle that because, of course, we get a lot of those forms that come in and say, hey, I want to remain in my home school. So that's something that's a big challenge that we're dealing with. And of course, we've addressed that, and we're working on that piece and what we need to do, some plans in the future for that. But that's a major challenge for us, and it all revolves around the numbers and the seat availability at locations. Because of course, if it's not a seat available at that particular grade, if a newcomer comes in ninth grade, if it's full at the shelter site, well then we have to move them to the nearest site, which the nearest site might not be a full shelter site, which a full shelter site has 4 teachers, 1 in each core area. And then, of course, we might have to move from, let's say, Independence to a Walnut Ridge, which Walnut Ridge only has 1 teacher. So that's a challenge. For us.
Just the logistics.
Just the logistics around that. So that's always a challenge, but we're working through it, and we're going to be okay. It's just that we always have with the fantastic teachers and instructional assistants and administrators that's working together. We work with them to help them schedule properly because it's very important that they pay attention to the students that Caryn and the other the shelter sites and the other teachers, and who comes, and we tell them based on the data, the OST and the OELPA itself in the reading and writing, saying who's doing really well. It's very important that we take a look at that data and say, wait a minute, now with these numbers, we really have to identify what students are can be eligible for the general education classroom with
Yeah.
the instructional assistant support inside that room. You follow me?
Yep.
Because we have to make room. We can't stand pat anymore, and the numbers it's just tough to stay that low. It's like we would like to have them. So very important. It's very important.
Yeah, if I can just kind of add to that challenge, because I know from our, my workshop and what we do here is that, a lot of our interpreters are faced with families calling, not only talking about, wanting to go to a different school, but their home school does not have an ESL teacher. So they are, again, we're a district of choice, and they have a right to refuse, a school that they're assigned to. So they're like, nope, I'm just going to go here, even though there isn't an ESL teacher. So I think that all of our teachers in the district, we need to start looking at ourselves as language teachers, I think, and just be prepared for the fact that EL students are coming and they're here to stay. So we're going to have to look at strategies and making sure that, we're, teaching our students and, just do good teaching is good teaching, I think. So, so that's the challenge that we're having to explain to the families, what's the difference between a school with ESL support versus a school without an ESL teacher, and things. And, yes, we do expect support for our ESL students from our general education teacher, but it may look a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because some families just say, hey, I want my student immersed into
Yes.
the classroom, and we're
Right.
right down the street from where their school is.
Whereas that may look different for a kindergartner versus somebody who's in ninth grade or
Absolutely.
because they're all learning together when they're little.
Some of the
Yeah.
same things, of course, at
Yeah.
that level. And kinder, if you take a look at the data, our kinders, by the time they hit
yes.
third, fourth grade, they're gone.
Oh,
They-
yeah,
they're just,
they're little
you wouldn't
yeah.
know.
Okay.
They're just doing great.
Right.
And we say, we in our building, we say, every ESL teacher is a reading teacher. Because everything revolves around reading. We
Right.
know that as educators, everything revolves around reading. I think, as a teacher, I think we need to look at every teacher's now an ESL teacher. As the cultural landscape of Columbus changes, I don't care what district you're in, you're going to have ELLs in your classroom. And I think one of the things that would be beneficial is when we're looking at PD, district-wide PD, really teaching scaffolding techniques, differentiation techniques,
Yeah.
simple things that you can apply in your classroom that don't require extra planning, but are equitable for every student in your classroom.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great pivot. So, let's talk about what are some strategies that we have either put in place. I think, Caryn, what you mentioned around scaffolding and just thinking about there's some specific things. Are there specific things around, English language learners that we're planning for to support teachers with? How are we, pivoting, innovating, knowing that we have these challenges?
What we're doing is that we're working on a plan now through the ESL Department, of course. That's going to be coming to you really, really soon.
Okay. All
About
right.
next year in the
I'll look
professional
to see
development.
it.
Yes. And it's very targeted professional development for not only our ESL teachers, but our general education teachers. Of course, that will do the things that Caryn just mentioned, the
Right.
scaffolding and learning of different things and different components that they can use inside their classroom. Just good teaching is good teaching. So, but what we're looking to do is hopefully, maybe get involved in those building PD days per region, and then we'll have people ready to train those general education teachers and the ESL teachers, because of course they need that too. Just
Absolutely.
to refresher. So we're working on a plan to get, and we're working on some things to put in place so we can be involved in those building PD days, and that way we can reach more general education teachers. That's the key, because our ESL teachers, we've done PD with them before over the years. We need to have that PD for our general education core teachers in the different areas so they can see how to work with our students and how to work with of course, our bilingual instructional assistants also inside their classroom. At the secondary level, we think that's very important that the instructional assistants be trained also in order to go into the classroom to assist the general education teacher. Because the ESL teacher, they're teach all indoors. They should know how. And of course, create a schedule for the instructional assistant to be appear just like teachers and move from classroom to classroom and follow those ESL or those English learners into those general education classrooms to support those teachers.
Right on. Okay. Myra, anything from you? Last thoughts?
Sure. Yes.
Many thoughts. Okay.
Yes. No. Many thoughts. I think, and as Caryn, as Michael has both mentioned, that with the additional students that we get, we definitely need to add additional resources. Not just staffing, but also resources for our teachers to be able to access information, and as well as for our families to access information. We've added a Haitian Creole speaker for our call center, so that has been an amazing addition, with the growth of that population from last year to this year and things. But as the numbers and the language increases, there's no way to keep increasing, that. So what do we look at? We look at different devices and resources like Pocket Talk, as well as Talking Points. Pocket Talk is a device that we have provided to all of our schools to be able to use to provide immediate interpretations when families come into the school building, just so that way the secretaries can say, hello, how can I help you? And the families can be able to speak back, and the device helps them to translate right back and forth.
Wow.
We're piloting that.
So who has it? Secretaries have that?
Yes, secretaries have it. We schools that has high numbers of EL students, we have provided additional devices for them. We've also provided to the pre-K teachers to use during their orientation. Some of their EL teachers have it for parent-teacher conference night. Central enrollment has it. So nurses also has it as well.
Wow.
But we are definitely looking to add additional to get more devices to be able to pass out more.
Yeah.
We have also piloted some of the devices with our transportation department. I think so. Transportation is
That's the first point of contact.
Yes,
For many of our
exactly.
families, right?
Exactly.
Past central enrollment. I mean, once you get enrolled, that's the first place to go, right?
Right. And so we want to make sure that our students are getting to school safe as well as arriving home safe. I think so. That device helps our bus drivers to be able to communicate with the student or the parent who is at the bus stop. And things. And then Talking Points is we piloted that software this year. So that is a communication, translation, messaging tool for our teachers to be able to communicate with our families back and forth and things. And it's been so great that we have received calls from the Health Services Department, as well as other schools that does not have access to Talking Points, that we're looking to expand it district-wide, at least to pilot this year.
Well, I think that's such a great place to sort of come in for a landing. It was interesting when I was at Walnut Ridge years ago as a principal there. We went through a string of probably 3 years where all of our valedictorians were second language learners, right, or multilingual learners. And so, sort of speaking to your point, Caryn, like what an investment that we make in all of our students, right, whether they're native, English speakers or whether they're multi-language learners, but you just don't know what's locked up inside of somebody, right? And what they have to offer and the value that they can provide, not just for their peers, but for all of us, right? In some cases globally, right? You don't know who's going to have the next cure for cancer, or who's going to have be the next political leader, or whatever that thing is, right? That we're waiting on. And so thank you all for being the folks that stand in the gap, that have a vision for these students that are second language learners, multilingual learners, and I think that we're all the better for it. Certainly our district's the better for the work that you do. There's more work to be done. Certainly we have to pivot, innovate, but you are the people that do the work. So we will end on that note. And from all of us here, this is Teacher Chat. I'm Todd Walker, your host, and these wonderful people will be out in the field working very hard. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.